On Mother's Day in Shanghai, Chinese authorities forcibly separate a mother from her son. An expert breaks down why Beijing is sticking to its zero COVID-19 policy. Are China's food shortages primed to get worse? In some regions, farmers are getting banned from working their fields. Is Washington changing its stance on Taiwan? 2 sentences were removed from the State Department's website defining U.S.-Taiwan relations. The update has drawn anger from Beijing. A top U.S. intelligence official says Beijing is carefully weighing the Russia-Ukraine war while keeping its eye on Taiwan. And aircraft carriers from 3 nations are sailing the waters around Taiwan. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. On Mother's Day in China, a Shanghai mother was forcibly separated from her son and taken to a quarantine facility. This as Shanghai authorities tighten pandemic prevention measures in parts of the city. NTD's Don Ma has the story.
Authorities in Shanghai are again tightening virus restrictions, just as the city was emerging from a month-long lockdown. Notices issued to several districts declared that a complete lockdown will begin Monday. Residents are forbidden to leave home, even to go buy food. Authorities are also halting courier services. All non-essential deliveries will be suspended. As authorities announced lockdowns, they're also forcibly dragging Shanghai residents to quarantine facilities. Here's the clip. This happened over the weekend on Mother's Day. The woman is forcibly separated from her son and taken to a quarantine facility. The scene here is a rare sight in the West, but in China, it's commonplace. Here's another person being forcibly taken to a quarantine facility. So why are Chinese authorities doing this? Erping Zhang, Edward Mason Fellow at Harvard University and YouTube host of Tea with Erping, says it's because of Xi Jinping's decree of eliminating every virus case in China.
The zero COVID policy comes from Beijing and from the Communist Party decision maker Xi Jinping. So the lower level officials must follow the decrees, otherwise they'll lose their jobs.
The responsibility of eliminating virus cases is passed down to local officials, and these officials have to report their results to their bosses.
The local officials, their primary concern is to report to the boss. They have 0 cases in their districts or cities or neighborhoods. They don't care for the sufferings of the people, residents.
Zhang says the reason why Chinese authorities don't care about people's suffering is due to China's political system.
In China, these officials are not voted into office by the residents or citizens or the people in their district or cities. They are handpicked by the Communist Party, so that's why they only report to the boss. They don't have to report to the residents or the masses.
Any hopes that China will move away from its zero COVID policy were dashed, as Xi Jinping last Thursday told Chinese officials in an important meeting to unswervingly follow the policy. Don Ma, NTD News.
Some French scholars have encouraged China to abandon its zero COVID-19 policy. But in an interview over the weekend, the Chinese ambassador to France shed some light on the motive behind that suggestion. He said the scholars aren't concerned with the well-being and freedom of the Chinese people, nor the economy in China. Instead, they want to see the Chinese regime fail and are waiting for Beijing's Chernobyl moment. The nuclear accident in Chernobyl in the former Soviet Union occurred in the 80s. It was widely seen as one of the major causes of the communist bloc's collapse in the beginning of the 90s. Is China's food crisis getting worse? In northern China, crop sowing season has already begun, but farmers in many areas are forbidden from leaving their homes under the country's zero COVID-19 policy. Enforcing strict lockdown measures has been given the highest priority, even over agriculture. Here's a look at what's happening.
Captured in a recent social media video, an elderly farmer from Qi'an City in Hebei province was forced to apologize to his entire village over public broadcast. His misstep? Leaving his home to do what any farmer would this time of year, tend to his land.
I went farming in the field just now. I was in a rush. The police patrol saw me and captured me, and then they criticized me. The pandemic is quite severe right now, and I was a bit insensitive to the situation.
To avoid similar embarrassment, other farmers reportedly sneak out at night to work in the fields.
In history, people have stolen all sorts of things, but I've never heard of anyone having to farm stealthily. But this is what's happening in Qian'an now. Look at these people creeping out at night to farm their land.
But local authorities refused to tolerate the nighttime violations. To stop them, they went door to door, sealing residents inside their homes from the outside. In other areas, farmers are getting arrested for working outdoors.
You're not allowed to leave your home or even just step out your door.
This farmer argued his only goal was working in his field. Here's what the enforcement worker said in reply.
You have refused to obey the orders and the decisions the people's government issued under the state of emergency. Now I verbally summon you to the police office for investigation.
These lockdown measures have sparked growing concern about food supplies for the coming year. Residents blame the strict rules on top leaders.
A lot of ridiculous things happen here. Why? What the leader likes will be embraced by the subordinates even more. These officials only care about their current positions. They don't care about others or the future. I really don't know what they want. I feel they just want to ruin the country, nothing else.
Hebei province is one of China's top agricultural regions.
A simple website update or a signal for a change in U.S.-Taiwan relations. An update from the U.S. Department of State is drawing anger from Beijing. Here's more. The Chinese Communist Party is lashing out at the U.S. That's after Washington updated the description of its relationship with Taiwan.
This kind of political manipulation on the Taiwan issue, an attempt to change the status quo in the Taiwan Strait, will surely stir up a fire that burns the United States.
Zhao is referring to an update on the State Department's website. The department recently changed its description of U.S.-Taiwan relations. Two missing sentences are catching people's attention. The earlier version makes two statements. One is, the United States recognized the government of the People's Republic of China as the sole legal government of China, acknowledging the Chinese position that there is but one China and Taiwan is part of China. The other states that the United States does not support Taiwan independence. Both of those sentences are gone following the update. And even though both the old and new statements say the U.S. encourages the peaceful solution of cross-strait differences, the new version adds on to that idea, noting that those peaceful solutions should be consistent with the wishes and best interests of the people on Taiwan. The news comes as the West watches Beijing's action toward Taiwan closely. Concerns have been rising that the Chinese regime may invade Taiwan, using the Ukraine war as an example. The Chinese regime has made it clear to the U.S. that Taiwan is its most sensitive issue when it comes to Beijing's relationship with Washington. And the U.S. has been walking a fine line. Here's the background. Beijing considers Taiwan part of its territory and has threatened to take the island back by force if necessary. That's despite Taiwan having never been ruled by the Chinese regime and having its own democratically elected leaders, constitution, and military. The U.S. doesn't have a formal diplomatic relations with Taiwan. But by law, the U.S. has to sell Taiwan arms so that it can defend itself from a possible Chinese invasion. And Taiwan is critical to U.S. safety. The island sits on a sensitive location. It's on a line of defense stretching from Japan to Malaysia, known as the First Island Chain. It prevents the Chinese regime from launching submarine-based missile attacks against the U.S. The U.S. also relies on Taiwan for its most advanced semiconductors, or microchips. These tiny devices are the brains of modern electronics, from cars to computers and iPhones to military equipment. Commenting on the description update, the State Department told Voice of America that there's no change in its One China policy. It also said the U.S. remains committed to Taiwan and urges Beijing to stop pressuring the island. Taiwan says the island will continue to deepen its relations with the U.S. and strengthen its self-defense capabilities.
In an interview with Financial Times, CIA Director William Burns said Chinese leadership is carefully weighing the Russia-Ukraine war. Burns said China has been struck by the ways in which Ukrainians have resisted Russian aggression. But he added that China has not wavered in its determination to gain control over Taiwan. The CIA director explained that China wants to analyze the consequences of using force to gain control over Taiwan. China has been sending fighter jets and bombers into Taiwan's air defense identification zone semi-regularly. And reports say the number of aircrafts flying through that airspace has ramped up within the last year. Tensions between self-ruled Taiwan and Beijing have been escalating. Communist China has never ruled Taiwan, but has long labeled Taiwan as part of its territory. Beijing is also actively blocking Taiwan from representing itself on the international stage. Due to objections from Beijing, the island is excluded from most global organizations. China's foreign ministry is again blocking Taiwan from joining the World Health Organization, or WHO. And beyond full membership, the Chinese regime also opposes Taiwan's bid to participate in any WHO conferences as observers. Beijing reiterated that stance on Monday. The ministry accused the Taiwanese government of using the pandemic for political manipulation and asked them to stop. The Chinese Foreign Ministry said, quote, "Otherwise, they will only bring humiliation upon themselves." Taipei has complained that exclusion from the WHO has hampered its efforts to fight the CCP virus, which causes COVID-19. From 2009 to 2016, Taiwan attended the World Health Assembly, which is the WHO's decision-making body, as an observer. But China blocked further participation after the election of Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen, calling her a separatist. China's vaccine diplomacy is taking a hit. The country's vaccine exports plummeted 97% last month from their peak in September 2021. The recent rise of China's infection numbers has highlighted the ineffectiveness of Chinese vaccines, especially against the Omicron variant. Japanese news agency Nikkei reported that Chinese vaccines were less effective against the Omicron variant compared to U.S. and European-made vaccines. What's more, a UK-based research company revealed that the use of Chinese vaccines as booster shots versus as a first dose plunged by 98% in Pakistan. That figure shifts to 93% in Indonesia and 74% in Brazil. The decline marks a major upset for Beijing's vaccine diplomacy. The communist regime has sold or donated vaccines mainly to developing countries to expand Beijing's influence there. Because of it, Nicaragua switched its diplomatic relations from Taiwan to China. That's after receiving a vaccine donation from China in 2021. China, Japan, and the U.S. all have aircraft carrier groups stationed in the Western Pacific right now. That's as tensions keep rising over the Taiwan Strait. Chinese aircraft carrier the Liaoning set sail on what was called a routine mission last week. It was escorted by 7 warships, including China's most powerful destroyer. According to Tokyo's defense ministry, the fleet passed through the Miyako Strait on Monday afternoon to enter the Western Pacific. According to U.S. Navy ship tracking information from Monday, the U.S.'s Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group is currently deployed in the Philippine Sea, not far from the Chinese fleet. Driven by fears that China may wage war with Taiwan, Japan also has a carrier group in the area. Japan sent an Izumo light aircraft carrier, a maritime patrol aircraft, and an anti-submarine aircraft to monitor the activities of the Chinese ships. Likewise, Taiwan announced plans to closely monitor the Chinese military. This is the first Pacific training session of the year for China's Liaoning Carrier Strike Group. That's all for today's China in Focus on YouTube. We're now sharing a shortened version of our program here, after being demonetized for more than a year. Here's what to look out for in our second half. 2 Chinese-born scientists are facing penalties from the U.S. legal system. It involves their ties to the Chinese Communist regime. And Tesla's factory in Shanghai is suspending nearly all its operations again. But this time, local authorities didn't order the halt. The news comes after a 3-week closure at the same facility last month. Our full episode can be watched on our partner platform at Bok TV. To sign up for a free 14-day trial, please click the link down below. Thanks for watching China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer, and see you tomorrow.
Presenting the heritage of traditional Chinese martial arts, promoting martial ethics, and reviving the true tradition. The 2022 NTD International Traditional Chinese Martial Arts Competition preliminaries will be held in New York and Taiwan. On August 28th, the finals will be broadcast live online worldwide. Registration hotline 188-477-9228. For more information, please visit martialarts.ntdtv.com.